Hi all, welcome back to Azure Content YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to learn how to trigger and monitor ADF pipeline via Python code. Okay, so what we are going to do in this video is we are going to create an ADF pipeline by going to Azure portal, and we will create a simple ADF pipeline. And what we will do is we will not trigger the pipeline via ADF portal. We will go to Python. In VS Code, we will write a Python script. That Python script will be responsible to trigger the ADF pipeline with all the parameters that is required in the pipeline, and we will also fetch the pipeline run details uh, using that Python code. And once we retrieve the pipeline status, we will update the pipeline run ID and pipeline status and insert it into a SQL table. So this is our whole architecture of workflow that we are going to achieve in this video. So please stay tuned till the end so that you will understand how to write the Python code in order to create a run or create execution for ADF pipeline via Python code, and also how to monitor the pipeline via Python code, and insert the data of that monitoring into a SQL database using Python code. So these are the steps that I already gave a walkthrough about. So we will trigger an ADF pipeline using Python code, and we will also pass a parameter dynamically, which will be an array kind of parameter that will be passed via the Python code, not via the ADF pipeline. So we are not going to do anything manually. We will just create the pipeline manually. That also can be automated using Python code. But for this video purpose, we are just going to trigger the ADF pipeline via Python, and we are going to track the status of pipeline until it is completed, and we will load the pipeline run ID and status into a SQL table. So this is the whole architecture. So let's start from the very first step, which is creation of ADF pipeline. So I'll just create a simple pipeline. So let's create a pipeline, and what we will do is we will pass some parameters through our Python code. That parameters will be an array of numbers. So it might be, say, suppose the we will pass the parameter as say 35 comma 16 comma 90. Okay, so suppose these are the array of numbers, array of integers that we have as a pipeline parameter, and what we are going to check is if this number is even or odd. So this is the simple pipeline that we will create in ADF, and we will run that pipeline via Python code. So let's try to achieve this. So let's create pipeline using for each activity. This for each activity will use the pipeline parameter. So I'm going to name this parameter as number, and of course the data type of this parameter will be an array data type. And as I mentioned, the parameter might be an array of integers. Uh, so these three numbers that I gave, we might change it for next run. So I'm giving as a default value, but it will not take it from this default value. It will take it from the Python code. Inside Python code, we will pass this uh, parameter value. Okay. So in the next run, we will also change it, and we will see the numbers are changed or not. So it should not be the same. This is not hard coded value. This is just a default value. If you do not pass any value from the Python script, then it will take this value. Okay. So now in this for each, it will iterate through the parameters. Okay. So it will take each of the parameter value, each of the items of the array in each iteration. So if there are three values here in the pipeline parameter, it will iterate three times. If there would be four, it will iterate four times, and so on. So for each item of that array, this uh, whatever activity is inside for each will run uh, the same number of times as the number is present in the array list. Okay. So in the first iteration, it will take the number 35, and we are going to use if condition to check if the number is going to be divisible by 2 or not. So here we have to write an expression in order to check if the number can be divided by 2 or not. So we have to see for the functions that can help us to check that. So we already know, everyone must be aware of this concept, that if a number is divisible by 2 and if the remainder is 0, then it's an even number. If the mod of a number, when it is going to be divided by 2, if it comes as 1, then it's going to be an odd number. So that's the logic we are going to write here. So in this if, we are going to write the expression using modular function. So okay, so mod of this number is coming for each iteration, it will be stored in the item of for each, right? So let me go back and show you. So the property which is holding the whole array is called items, as you can see here, and each of the uh, individual items of that array or individual numbers in that array is termed as item. Okay, and you can see that here when I'm writing the expression, if I want to refer to that particular number, then I can select this value which is going to give me this expression at the rate item. So this is pointing to each of the numbers for each of the iterations, something that you might be already aware if you're working in ADF. Okay, so this item will hold 35 in first iteration, in second iteration it will hold 16, in third iteration it will hold 90, as these are the numbers we have given in the array of pipeline parameter. Okay, so if mod of this item is equals to 0, so we are going to write the expression using modular function. So let me search for that. So you can see the example here. If mod of 10 comma 4 returns 2, then we can do something. So similarly, if mod of this item comma 2 is equals to 0, then it will be treated as even number. If it is not 0, then it will be treated as odd number. So here we will be writing mod function, mod of this item, and we will try to divide it by 2, and if it is equals to, so there is a equal function as well. So if it is equals to 0, then this expression will hold true for the even numbers. So if this condition is satisfied, then we will go inside true block and we will set a variable. Let's create a variable as well. We have not created variable, so we can directly create it from here, or we can go back into the pipeline level and we will go to the variable. So let me create it from here. So we will say number, and let it be string. Okay, so we have created a variable here. Let me go back and show you. In the pipeline level, you can see variables. So here you can see number is already created here. So instead of number, let me give say num. Okay, to differentiate between parameter name and variable name. Okay, so here inside if, we are setting this as even, so we will say that number will be coming as an integer. So first of all, we will convert it to string. So using string function, we will convert it to string. So let me use this function. So here, first of all, we will convert that number into string. So that number is stored in something called item property, as we know. So let me use that item. Okay, and now we will say this number is even. Okay, so that concatenation we will achieve using concat function. So here let me use concat function. Inside the concat function, let me zoom in. Okay, so inside this concat function we will write comma, and then we will hardcode that this number is an even number. Okay, since it is inside true block, which means that it is going to be divided by 2 and remainder is 0, then it is an even number. So let me rename it as even. Okay, and if in case it goes to the false condition, then we are going to set it to odd. So again, number num variable and we are going to use same expression, concat and then string of item. Okay, and what we are going to concat is, we are going to concat the number 35 is an odd number. Okay, so this should work fine. Let's try to debug before creating the Python code. So this is the default value, so let's try to run it and let's try to see the output is coming correctly or not. So there will be 3 iterations for number 35. So you can see these are all running in parallel. We can set it to sequential to understand in a better way. So you can see that whole pipeline execution is also completed within seconds, and you can see two numbers have gone inside the true block and one has gone into the odd the false block. So if you remember, the numbers were 35, 16 and 90. So 35 should be odd and other two should be even. So let's check the output now. So you can see number 16 is an even number and 90 is an even number and 35 is an odd number, which is true. So let me give space here in the concatenation before is, let me give space for better readability. Okay, so now this should be fine, and let me also rename this pipeline, say even underscore odd, and let me prefix it with pl underscore even underscore odd. Let me publish it now. So this pipeline is working fine, and now what we will do is we will write a Python code in order to trigger this pipeline and also monitor the status of the pipeline execution. So since this pipeline is very simple pipeline and a very small use case, so it's you can see that it has completed within seconds. So what I will do is, before if condition, I'll also uh, drag wait activity so that it will be in progress for some time, and let it be maybe 20 seconds, so that we can also try to see the change of the status from in progress to succeeded. Because once we trigger the Python code, by the time it goes to the execution checking step, it might be already completed. So I don't want to um, just see the succeeded part. I also want to see the in progress of pipeline status, and then it changes to succeeded, and then we will load it to the SQL database. Okay, so now our pipeline is ready. Let's go to Visual Studio Code and let's try to create a Python script in order to execute the pipeline via Python code. So I will say the Python uh, file name as run adf.py, and here we will write our code. So first of all, what we will do is we need to authenticate our credential from this VS Code to our Azure. So there should be some way to uh, create the Azure credential. So in order to do that, we will import something called default credential. We can also talk about default credential, default Azure credential class, which is a very important class when you are writing a Python code and you want to perform something using Azure portal. Then this class called default Azure credential will be very useful. So we will also try to understand what is default Azure credential and what are the ways of authentication in in default Azure credential in separate video. Okay, so there are multiple ways. You can also use managed identity. You can use CLI in order to authenticate. So you can also use service principal. So those things we will cover later. It's a separate topic altogether. So in this video, we will use default Azure credential in order to authenticate. Okay, so that class is present in Azure identity module. So we will import Azure identity. Uh, so from this module, we will import the class called default Azure credential. Okay, so you could see it was coming in the suggestion as well. Okay, so now what is the next step? Now we also have to run our ADF pipeline. So in order to do that, we also have to import the modules related to that. So from azure.management, you can see it's coming management.data factory. We will import the data factory management client. So this class will help us to run the pipeline and check the pipeline status. Okay. So now, as and when we need something else, some other modules to import, we will import on the fly. So these are the two which will help us to uh, authenticate for Azure and also for Data Factory. Okay. So we are good now. Of So of course we need to install the packages here. So we will do that before running the Python code. Okay, so now what we will do is we will use this default Azure credential as we talked in order to authenticate. Okay, so we have to create an object for that. So I'll create something called credential. Okay, you can name it anything. So this is a an object that will be using this class. So this is basically an object of default Azure credential class. Okay, so now we will also create an object of this class, which is data factory management client. Okay, so again, let me create an object. Now I will name it as ADF client. Okay, ADF underscore client. So basically it is called a client object. So we are creating an ADF client object from this class, or we can also call it as a constructor class. So default, um, so data factory management client. Now this is not a parameterless constructor. It actually it actually expects some parameters. So here you can see the suggestions. It expects the credential, it expects subscription ID. Okay, so we will, so it expects the base URL, it expects credential, then it expects the subscription ID. So all of these are not mandatory. I'll go with credential, and credential is basically the object that we created using default Azure credential. So I'm going to pass that, and then I'm also going to pass the subscription ID. And instead of hard coding it here, I'll create a subscription ID variable here where I'll store all my subscription details. So I'll create all the variables that is required. So I'll copy my subscription ID from my Azure portal. So let me go to my Azure portal, and I can see my subscription ID here, and I'll paste it here. So in this variable I'm storing it, and the same variable I'll use it here. Okay, so now our client object is ready. So using this client object, we will create execution for ADF pipeline. So now let's create a, a variable called pipeline run. Okay, pipeline run. Okay, so this is the variable we are just going to create using ADF underscore client, and let's see the properties present here. So if I scroll down, you can see there is something called pipeline runs, and then also pipelines is also one property. So let's try to use this pipelines, and then let's try to see what all are present here. So you can see create underscore run. So this is the function that will help us to create the execution for pipeline. Okay, ADF pipeline. So what all we need to pass it here, you can see the arguments that is required is data factory name, and then what are all the useful parameters for us. Here we can pass the pipeline parameter, we can pass the pipeline name, and what else do we need? Okay, so that's it. We will pass the data factory name. That is the first thing. Then let me take another one. We will pass the pipeline parameter, of course, and then we will pass, say, resource group name, and let's see, pipeline, yeah, pipeline name. So these are the four things that we will pass in order to create the run in pipeline. So either we can hardcode directly here, or I'm going to store everything in variable separately, so that anywhere if we need it again, we do not uh, rewrite the code. Okay, so let me create the variables. Pipeline name. Okay, so let me pass everything here. So data factory name is demo anu ADF. So let me pass it here. We'll come to parameters later. Now resource group name is rg underscore anu demo, and let me paste it here. And pipeline name, let's go here and copy the pipeline name. Okay, so we are done. Now for parameters, what we will do is, we have parameters in the form of array, and we cannot pass it as a string. So what we will do is, we will use a dictionary, and that dictionary will hold the pipeline parameter name and its value. Okay, so let me use this parameter name as number. So here we'll say number, and of course dictionary is denoted as key and then colon and then the value. So here our value is nothing but an array. So let me copy this. So either what I can do is, I can keep it here like this, or what I can do is, I can say array equals to, and then I can write my array like this. Okay, and let me give double quotes here, and then I can pass this array value here as the value of this dictionary. Okay, so we are good. So let me remove these two lines of the code and keep it here before using the parameter value, because this is not direct variable. So we are creating this variable, and this is looking too small, so let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, okay, so now we will pass the value for each of these attributes here. So the data factory name will be coming from this variable, parameters will be coming from parameters, and resource group name and the pipeline name. So even if it is uh, equivalent name given to the argument name and the value for this argument, still I'm copying it in, just in case if there is any spelling difference. You can keep a different name in the variable section. It need not be necessarily the same, so you can give PL name here instead of the whole pipeline name, but the argument will be same, which is required in this method. Okay, so we are good here. So now our script to run the ADF pipeline is ready. Let's check what will be the output which will be stored in this particular variable once the ADF is triggered using this method. Okay, create run method. So for simplicity, we can also um, make it in a different lines. So let me do that. Okay, yeah. So here what we will do is, we will try to print whatever is coming in the pipeline run variable. So let's try to run this now, and let's try to see if it is able to execute ADF pipeline or not. So right now you can see, if we go to monitor section and if we try to refresh, it will be showing all the triggered pipeline runs for last 24 hours. So you can see there is no execution already there for PL underscore even odd pipeline. So once we run our Python code, it should be appearing here in the monitor section, and we can also see the execution details, and we can also match the run ID. So the run ID should which is coming in the Python, and the one which is coming here should be same. So let's try to run our Python code now. So before running the Python code, of course we need to install some of the packages which is required here. So either we can directly run pip install and then module name, or what we can do is, we can create a virtual environment, and then inside that virtual environment we will install all the necessary modules. So the best practice is to create a virtual environment and install all the necessary modules inside the virtual environment so that it will not have a huge load in your system, and it will create its own separate OS. It will install the modules in the necessary folder itself, not in your local system. Okay. So let's try to create the virtual environment. We will write Python and then -m and then venv, and we can also give the name as, say, my environment, and let's run it. So now you can see it has created a folder here where I also have a subfolder called scripts, and here we have the necessary executable files, but it has not yet completed. It will also create some more files here. We are waiting for activate files so that we can activate the virtual environment. So let it get completed. So once it is completed, we will activate our virtual environment, and we will try to run this whole program inside the virtual environment. Okay, so you can see the activate file is ready, and our virtual environment is fully ready. So the code completion, you can see it is coming to the next line. So now we will activate our virtual environment. So let me do that. My env and then scripts folder, scripts, and then activate. Okay, so let me run it. So now you can see we are inside the virtual environment. Let me minimize it, and now we will install all the necessary modules. So first one is Azure Identity. So pip install Azure hyphen identity. So let it install all the necessary classes from this Azure Identity module. So let's wait. So you can see the installation is in progress. Once it is done, we will go ahead with installation of Azure Management Data Factory module. Okay, so let's wait. Yeah, so now that is done, let's install the next one, which is Azure hyphen management hyphen data factory. So let's wait for this to complete. Okay, it's in progress. Yeah, it's done now. So now let's clear the terminal. So now our Python code is ready in order to execute the ADF pipeline that we have created. So we have achieved the code writing part for these two steps. We have the code to trigger the ADF pipeline using Python, and we have also passed our pipeline parameters dynamically. Uh, Once we will test it out, we will write the code in order to check the pipeline status after getting the run ID, and we will also log that pipeline run ID and status into the SQL Server. So let's try to test these two steps that we have written the code for, and once it is tested out, then we will write the code for the next steps. So let's go back and try to run the code. Okay, so let me write Python and then this file name, and once I hit enter, it should run this piece of code, and it should also print the result that we are looking for, and we should be getting the details once the pipeline runs. So we are printing pipeline run uh, a variable output. So here you can see this is the output which it has printed, and it has some property called additional properties, which is holding no value, and then there is something called run ID, which is holding this alphanumeric value. So if I go to the ADF pipeline monitor section, and if I hit on refresh, you can see if the pipeline got executed or not. So let's refresh again. So now you can see this pipeline execution is coming, and if we check the run ID for it, it starts with 53 and it ends with 400, and this is the one which is coming correctly. So it has been able to capture the run ID properly. So so from this result set, we have to take the property called run ID only. We do not need to get the additional properties. So from the whole results, what we will do is we will try to fetch out the run ID. So instead of pipeline run, let me give the property name as run result to make it more meaningful. Let me give it as run underscore result, and instead of getting the run result, the whole of the run result, we will try to get only the run ID part, because that's what we have to store it in the SQL database. So I will create another variable called run ID, and from the run results, what we will do is we will get the run underscore ID, because this is the property which is holding the run ID. So this is what I want to print it. Instead of the whole result, I am just taking out the run ID, which will be stored in as a string. So that's what I'm trying to print it, and that's what I will also load it into my SQL table as a next step. So before doing the loading part into SQL, we also need to capture the status of the pipeline. So basically, the pipeline should be in progress first, and then the status should turn to succeeded. And once it is completed, the execution is completed, whether it has succeeded or failed, the final run result or the final status should be inserted into the SQL. Okay. So in order to get the final status, what we will do is we will create a status variable, and since since we have just triggered the pipeline, of course the status will be set to in progress first, and then eventually it will change to succeeded or failure. So let me put the status hard coded as in progress first, and then we will try to capture the status and change this in progress into either succeeded or failed based on the status that we are getting from the run result. Okay. So first of all, I created a variable called status, which is holding in progress as a hard-coded value, and we are checking while the status is equals to. So I'm going to give double equals to, because we are doing a comparison here. So while the status is equals to in progress, then loop through this piece of code, which will try to keep on checking the status. Okay. So once the pipeline is executed and it goes into in progress state, I'll try to wait for maybe 10 seconds. So I'm going to give sleep of 10 seconds. Okay. So time is not imported. So let me try to import time here. Import time module. So now this error is gone. Okay. So after waiting for some time, we will try to get the status. So from where we can get it, we have created this ADF client object, right, from the data factory management client. So using this object itself, we are trying to execute the pipeline. So the same object will be helping us to get the status of the pipeline. So I'm going to use the same, and on top of this we are going to use the pipeline runs property. Okay, so here we have used pipelines dot create pipeline, but now we have to get the status of the pipeline. So we are going to use pipeline underscore runs dot get method, and inside this method we have to pass all the necessary parameters in order to get the pipeline run status of the data factory pipeline that we are running. So we have to pass the run ID here. Okay. So you can see we have the option to pass run ID, and we can also pass data factory name, and we can pass resource group name, and what else do we need? Let's see. Yeah, so that's it. So let me pass the run ID. So run ID we are already capturing here. So let me use this particular variable, and then data factory name we already have it in this particular variable, and resource group name also we are capturing there. So let me remove the comma. So using this, we will get the pipeline run status details, and let's load it into a variable called run status. Okay, and let me print this run status variable in order to see in which particular property the status is present. in order to check that, let me print this run status and see, as we have done it for run result earlier. So that's what we will be printing here in order to check what is the property which is holding the run status. Okay, so let's try to run this again. So let me write Python and run this Python code. Okay, so it should trigger the pipeline again. So let's wait. It's okay, so it's running. So now you can see it has not given me the whole result, it is just capturing the run ID and printing it here. So if I refresh it, so you can see the another execution details is present, and this is the run ID which is matching here. Okay, and now you can see the run status value is coming here, and this whole JSON is basically the output of run status. So we have additional properties, pipeline run value, debug run ID, and the whole run details. But what we need is we need the status. So here you can get the run ID as well, and we are looking for status. So here it is. So you can see status properties holding in progress first, and then it should change to succeeded after some time. So till this point it is in progress, and if I move down, it should be turning to succeeded. Here you can see it is succeeded. Okay, so it is still running in loop because we have not managed the loop yet. So let me terminate it. Let me clear the screen. Just remember that the status is present here in the status property. Okay, so that's what we are interested in to capture. So here what I will do is I will use another variable that will basically get the status from run status output. So run status dot status, and then we will print the status. So now if we run it, it should be able to capture the status properly. And basically the concept here is we are setting up the status as in progress, but while the status is in progress, we are trying to check the status by getting the details from the pipeline runs. So suppose if once the status is in progress, after some time it will check the status. If it is still in progress, it will recheck it until the status is changed to something else. Okay, so suppose if it changes to succeeded, then if it goes back to the while loop, and if it checks status is equals to in progress, and this condition will fail if it is succeeded or failed, so it will not go inside again, and it will come out of the loop. Okay, so till the point it is in progress, it will keep on checking. If it is anything except in progress, it will come out of the while loop. Okay, so to prove that, let's try to run this. So here again, let's try to run this. So here it will again trigger the pipeline. So let's wait for the third execution. So you can see the run ID is captured. Let's hit on refresh. So you can see it is currently queued. So it will wait for 10 seconds and then it will check. So now it is showing in progress. Okay, and you can see the status and run ID is also correct. So you can see it is again checking, and it is still finding it to be in progress. So it is again going into loop, but once it is changed to something else, either succeeded or failed, now it is succeeded, right? So it, after checking again, it will break the loop. So now you can see it captured the status as succeeded and it came out of the loop. So till the point it is in progress, it will keep on checking the status in loop until it finds the status to be changed as succeeded or failed. Okay, so instead of in progress, we can also perform the same thing using status as queued, but we are good with in progress, so we are hard coding it as in progress. But while checking in the loop, we are setting it to the real status that we are getting from the pipeline runs. So once it is changed to something else, it is coming out of the loop. So this is what we have to load it in the SQL table. The final status is what we have to load in the SQL table. Okay, So to connect to the SQL, we need some connection string. So from where will I get that? So I have an Azure SQL Server present in my subscription. So what I will do is I'll go to the SQL Server and take the connection string. Okay, so this is my database, and here you can see the connection string for this database. So I'll use PyODBC in order to connect to my database. So let me use this driver and we'll create a connection object. So let me use connection string. Okay, and here I'll put my details of the uh, database. Okay, so I have ODBC 17 installed in my local machine. So you can see what is the compatible version for you. And in order to connect to the SQL Server using Python, we need PyODBC library, so that we have to install it. And we have the server name, database name, user ID and password. So I have to replace my user ID and password here. So let me do that. And password. Okay, and everything else is fine. So now I will use PyODBC library to connect to the SQL. So PyODBC we have not imported, so that's why it is giving error. So let me import PyODBC. Okay, let me save it. Now you can see the error is gone. So using PyODBC module, we will try to connect to the SQL. So dot connect, and then here I'll use this connection string. So now we have created the object to connect to the SQL. Now we will use this object to create cursor. So this cursor will help us to execute the SQL query. So let me write the variable name also as cursor, and then let's use this object dot cursor. Okay, so cursor method I'm going to use, and we can use this cursor to execute the SQL query. So cursor dot execute will help us to execute any SQL query that we want to write. Okay, so let me write it in a multi-line. So what I will do is I'll create a table named say ADF pipeline run. If the table does not exist, it will create the table, and then we will write the code to insert run ID and status into that table. So let me write the SQL script to create the table in the SQL first. Okay, so suppose I want to check if the table exists or not, so I can simply use select star from information schema dot tables. So this is a default system table which holds the database details. Okay, so if I run this, it will give me all the objects, all the tables present in my SQL Server. So here you can see in the DBO schema we have this table, all these tables are present. Okay, so I'm interested in table underscore name. Here you can see the property holding table name is table underscore name equals to, suppose I'm going to give ADF pipeline run. Okay, so of course this table is not present, so it will give null. So from the database information schema dot tables, we are checking if there is any table called ADF pipeline run. Okay, let me correct it. ADF pipeline run. So it's not present. If it would have been present, it will give one row here. Okay, so what we will do is if this is null, so if we will say if not exists, if there's nothing here uh, coming as the output, then we will write our code here inside begin and end to create the table. So we will say create table and then table name. Let me copy from here, table name, and we'll create the schema for this table. We will hold the run ID that we have to capture, and let's give the data type as nvarchar, and let's try to create a status column that should also be nvarchar, say 100, and let's try to capture the date as well. So I'll say date time column, okay, or maybe updated date time, and I'll give the data type as date time, and we can set it as a default value of get UTC date. Okay, so this function will help us to get the current date in UTC time zone and store it in this column whenever an insert happens. Okay, so we are good, and this is the code that we will write in our Python. So suppose if I run this, so it says incorrect syntax near get UTC date. Okay, so in order to give a default value, you have to use the default keyword here. Okay, so let me execute it. So now you can see command is executed successfully. It should have created the table as well. If I run only till this point, you could see there's an entry here. You can see the table name exists. Okay, so let me drop this table so that we can create this using Python code. So let me drop this table now. And now if I run this piece of the code to check if this table exists or not, you can see now again it is null. So now let me copy this and let me go back to the Python code and paste it here. Okay, so I'll close this multi-line here with 3 quotes. Okay, so we are good, and we'll also use formatted string by using this f keyword here. Okay, so we are good, and we can also instead of giving the hard-coded name to the table, uh, what we will do is we will create a variable here. Say we have pipeline name, resource group name, everything. Let's also give SQL table. Okay, and let me hold the table name here. Let me copy it from here and paste it here. Okay, so this variable we will use instead of hard coding the table name. So let me give it in the curly braces so that it will get the correct value. And the same here, instead of hard coding it, let me give the variable name. So we should be fine now, and once this query executes, we are going to commit these changes. Okay, so we are going to use commit connection.commit. So this will create the table. Now we have to insert the run ID and the status into these run ID and status column respectively, and updated date time will by default get the UTC date, which is the current date time. Okay, so now let's write the code to also insert the required details. So cursor.execute, again we will use the same execute method to insert into the SQL table. So again we will go to SQL in order to write the insert query. So insert into this table, right? So table name, and then what we have to write, we have to give the column names here. So run ID is the first one, and then status is the second one, and we have to give values. What are the values that we will give? We are not going to hard code it. Let me copy it, and here let me paste it. So what we will do is we will use here question mark question mark. So this is a placeholder that will basically get the run ID and status from the variable that we are going to specify here. So after comma, we are going to get the run ID. So run ID is present in this variable run underscore ID. So here I'm going to give run ID first, and then in the second question mark it will take the status. It is present in the status variable. So here I'm going to give status. So let me give the formatted string again, and then let me close the connection. So connection dot commit will commit the changes, and then let me close the cursor. We have created the cursor here, so we will close this here, and we will also close the connection with SQL. Okay, connection dot close. So this should help us to insert the data, run ID and status column into the SQL table. Okay, and let's also print the same here. So we'll get the run ID. We will say maybe we will say that run ID. So we will say in the formatted string here we can give the placeholder for run ID, and it will take it dynamically. We will say run ID with status as, and we'll give the status value is saved to the table. Okay, saved to the SQL table. We have also parameterized the SQL table variable, so let me use the same here, and we are going to print it after it has successfully inserted the value into the SQL table. So now let's try to run the whole code, and let's try to see if it is able to capture the run ID properly, and if it is able to capture the status and insert the same into the SQL table named ADF pipeline run. Okay, so let's try to execute this Python code now, and it says no module named pyodbc. Of course we forgot to install it, so let me use pip install pyodbc, and it is going to install it in my virtual environment. So let's wait for it. Yeah, so it's done. Now let's try to run the code again, and we will see in ADF it should create another run. Yeah, so now you can see it has started the next execution with run ID as D9 and ending with 400, and the same is captured here, and it says that the status is in progress. Until it is succeeded, it will keep on looping through the status checking code. So again it is saying in progress. It will loop until it changes to succeeded. So now it has changed to succeeded. Let's wait for this status to come as succeeded, and we will also query this ADF pipeline table. Okay, so you can see it has captured the run ID, it has captured the status column, and updated date time is also captured, and the same is getting printed here. It says run ID, and the run ID value with status as succeeded is saved to the ADF pipeline run table. Okay, so we can also name it as table, and if we see the execution, it should also give us the correct result. Here you can see 90 is an even number, and 16 is an even number, and 35 is an odd number. Let's try to rerun it with another value for the pipeline parameter. So here, instead of this array, let's try to give another number. Maybe this time let's give a big number like this, this, this. Okay, so now I have saved the code, and let's try to run this again. Let me clear the terminal for better visibility. Python run adf.py. Let's run it. Let's wait for the pipeline execution to start. So it has captured a run ID. Here it is in queued state, and this is the run ID 2F, ends with 400, and let's wait. it's in progress. It's showing as in progress, and here in the table it has not yet inserted any value, because once it is succeeded or failed, once it is changed the value to anything other than in progress, it will come out of the loop. So currently it is still in progress. Once it has completed, be it success or failure, it will terminate and update the status by inserting another row. So currently we just have one row, and now it has succeeded, and we can also check it from here. It is succeeded. It should also capture it here in the table. You can see it has succeeded with the correct run ID, and if we go inside it, we should be able to see the pipeline parameter details that we have given. Okay, so here you can see the loop inside this pipeline. It has iterated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So for each has iterated 5 times. Earlier it was only 3 times because we had array of 3 numbers. Now if we see, this number is an odd number, which is correct because it ends with 1. And let's match it in the code. We have given the array of numbers. Let's try to see if it matches. So here you can see it should be coming from one of these numbers, 172. So here you can see this is the number, and similarly the next one is 48592, and it is also from this array, and it is giving the correct result. Similarly, third number is also from this list, and it's giving the correct result. This is also from the same list, giving the correct result, and the last one is also ends with 7, and it is odd, giving the correct result. So it is fully dynamic pipeline, where if you want to change the pipeline parameter, you do not need to go to ADF. Sometimes we do not have access to the ADF environment, and we can just try to control it from the Python code. If you have to deal with similar scenario, you can write such Python code where you do not need to go to the ADF environment and change anything in the pipeline. Or if same use case is there for any other scenario where you have to pass the pipeline parameter value externally, not from the ADF pipeline, then you can use uh, this Python code in order to pass the pipeline parameter and do everything dynamically. Okay, and you can also capture the run ID and status from the ADF pipeline using Python code, and insert those values into the SQL table using PyODBC library. So we have achieved all these steps. So that's how we can trigger the ADF pipeline via Python code, and we can also monitor the pipeline execution details and capture those into a SQL table using Python code. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you find this video helpful. Please hit on like button, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it yet. Please practice all this code by your own so that you can understand each of the steps well, and you can also become confident in writing Python codes. It's very easy and very helpful in data engineering field. So please stay tuned for upcoming videos as well. Thank you.